Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. Today we are looking at tetrahedrons. Now, this is a relatively new discovery for me. I've been finding these and I've been finding these over there and a whole bunch of tetrahedrons. So my house is right now full of tetrahedrons. And then you have some things which are like combination of tetrahedrons. This is the double tetrahedron. And so the question is why? I find that the tetrahedron, see, I've been struggling to bring together many things in my mind. My mind by its nature is very curious, and I'm trying to learn about many, many different things. And I've been trying to use different methods to bring everything together. And in that process, give me just a second here. Yeah. In that process, I have tried to use many, many different tools. I've been using visual diagrams. Visual diagrams are extremely powerful in putting things together, in integrating things. The biggest thing I learned in the last 1.5 years was as a result of studying 3 different texts. It was Tao Te Ching, Bhagavad Gita, and the Gospel of John. We studied these texts in depth. We basically immersed ourselves in that. And I saw a pattern, something that was common to all these 3 texts, which is missing from our modern life. Our modern life, we are superb at analysis of breaking things apart. The hallmark of these texts is integration, of bringing things together. And what I have discovered, thanks to Bucky, this is very, very recent, only about a month or 2, that tetrahedron is the most powerful way of bringing things together. It is the simplest system. It is the simplest 3-dimensional shape. So we're going to be looking at tetrahedron. I'm just going to bring up things and I'm going to talk about it. The core idea here that I'm focusing on is how to make 1 out of 4. How to bring things together as a single unit. And tetrahedron is the most powerful way of doing this. Now, we did a whole series on Gospel of John. We spent almost 10 hours going through Gospel of John and interpreting it in the context of the tetrahedron. So I'm going to start with this. I'm going to use this diagram as the base. In Gospel of John, we started with this, but now I'm shifting to this diagram. So the question is why? This diagram focuses on the vertices and edges. See, the tetrahedron, you can look at it as vertices, you can look at it as edges, and you can look at it as surfaces. Each of them actually produce amazing, amazing results. So here, I'm going to start with these. So you can see, always whenever you see this diagram, you see it always as a tetrahedron. So this node in the middle, imagine it in 3D pulled out from here, okay? For the sake of simplicity, I'm showing you this from above. So it is the same tetrahedron seen from above like this, okay? So let me just jump into this. I'm putting this in the middle of every slide so you'd never forget that everything that you're seeing, you have to rotate and see it from multiple angles, because there are different relations that you will miss if you get locked into one perspective. So let's start with what we talked about in Gospel of John, which we generalized to philosophy: truth, goodness, wisdom, love, and the relationship between them. What we saw was truth, which represented by God the Father, wisdom represented by God the Son, the unifying force represented by the helper, and the fourth element, which is you, which is us, children of God, representing goodness. So this is an invitation for us to be good and to become children of God, be in accordance with eternal principles, or have eternal life. Eternal life is simply life according to the eternal principles. The point that we made was that wisdom is impossible without truth. So firstly, I mean, there are just so many details here. So firstly, I moved from the nouns to adjectives. I want to also experiment with verbs. Okay. We think of the world, Jordan Peterson makes a very beautiful point. There are two ways of looking at the world. You can look at world as a place of things, or you can look at it as a forum of action. These wisdom traditions look at the world as a forum for action. Why adjectives? Because what you're trying to do is that you're trying to keep your mind focused on the one that is being brought together by all these four. So in order to be good, you have to be true. You have to be wise. You have to be unifying. In order to be unifying, you have to have wisdom. You have to base it on truth. You have to be good. So any one of them cannot really function without the other. And the one, the I am of this 3D, of your being, is being looked at from four different perspectives, but it is the same thing. It is a way, this is a way of separating things in order to understand them in depth, yet never missing connections between them. So you can see that this is truth and this is the unifying force. And this line, this is the relationship between them. So there are 6 different relationships, 6 different edges. You can think about them as vertices, and then you can think of them as edges, right? What I'm doing is that I'm taking many different examples of many different systems, and I'm trying to show how the tetrahedral model allows you to think of things in an integrated way, while allowing you to focus on each of them, as well as relationships between them. And whatever work you do on each of these, whether you're focusing on an individual thing or relationship, it all adds up in the power of the tetrahedron in a synergetic way. So you're going through these spirals. Every time you come back to the same point, because you have traversed the other nodes, you understand it better. Let me go to this. I talked about, God, the Father, the Son, the Helper, the Child. We did, 4 big sessions we went through the entire Gospel of John to show how these apply in that. All right. Next, I want to go to the elements. Now, we have not talked much about this, and this is a very big step. The 4 elements are very old. I have replaced fire with light. I am taking liberties here. I find that light to be far more integrative in this context. So I've chosen light. So light, air, water, earth. I have used colors which are, there is a whole discussion on colors. The colors I've been using so far are based on Carl Jung's work. Carl Jung's work is focused on psychology. It is focused on, our psychic experience. These are focused on metaphysics. So I am using these instead of the Carl Jung colors. That's again a very large topic. As I said, this is an introductory session. We are opening up more questions than we are going to answer, but I'm going to do this presentation and then I'm going to invite people to speak. We have some people here who have spent a lot of time, more decades in some cases, with tetrahedrons than I have. So I'm going to invite them to give their comments on tetrahedrons. So I'm going to ask Kurt and Strupi to talk about their take on tetrahedron or anything that I've said when we get started. I want to now focus on some general themes, the power of tetrahedron. The first point I want to make, the 4 as 1. I actually don't like tetrahedron because it focuses on the 4-ness. I very much like something like a quaternity or quaternion, where it is like a quarter of the whole. So it is like one part of the whole is captured in the Latin base of quarter, and tetra tends to be the 4 part. So I really like the quarter thing. So this is like, these are 4 parts. Now, I want to show you how they are one. So let's take the Earth. Okay, I hope you watched the great video by Bucky. When you actually connect up these connections, these edges, it becomes a stable structure. It becomes one through the material, and it holds together. It stabilizes itself. That is the way it connects through material, through Earth. Now imagine light. Okay, imagine interaction between these nodes as light flowing. So you see these lines here, imagine they're full of light. And as the light keeps increasing, these become larger and larger. The entire tetrahedron becomes full of light. And you see it as just one shining thing. One shining thing. So that's how it would be in terms of light. You can do the same thing with water. This is, the living water being ejected. The other beautiful point about it, this, which is what Bucky makes beautifully, is that this system is not a closed system. This is an open system. It is a best way of thinking about it, it's a leaky system. Things can leak in and things can leak out. There is an identity to what is inside a tetrahedron, but it leaks. So the wisdom of one person will impact other people. It will impact other people's wisdom. It can impact other people's unifying ability or love. There is a lot of interaction. So imagine a whole bunch of these, together, which is a society, and they are interacting with one another through the vertices. You can also see the oneness coming from the edges, which bring things together, which bring them together, like Father and the Son. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. So you have that separation making possible love between them, which then is transmitted to the helper and to us to go further. But so there is that unity made possible by this movement that is taking place. All right, let me take the next theme here, that of a self-stabilizing system. Again, the best example of that was Bucky, where you put those 6 edges and then it just freezes. Before that, like a cube, it is all wobbly. It can fold this way and that way. But with this, it is a stable system. You can focus on the vertices and think about it in terms of vertices, and you can think of it in terms of edges, and then you can think of it in terms of surfaces. So for example, in what we studied, the Trinity would be this surface here, and then you can look at your reaction to the Trinity from this point of view. So you can change perspectives and understand things better. So it is, the other thing I want to point out here is that in Tetrahedron, see, let me step back. In the modern times, we are analytical. We are always thinking in terms of either or. We are saying yes or no. What this is that this is actually, these relationships are the yes and relationships, and they together complete a system. And the relationship between them is not that of opposites. There is a tension between them, but each of them contributes to the other. So this way of thinking about everything in an integrated way, never losing track of the oneness of things, the identity of things, the I am of things and of yourself, while engaging in and participating in the different functions that we have. That is what this tetrahedron makes possible. Let me quickly touch upon a few more things, and then I'm going to open it up for comments. After I'm done, I'll be done in about 5 to 10 minutes. I'm going to ask Kurt if he has any comments, and then I'm going to ask Strupi if he has any comments, and then we'll open it up for anybody. And Kurt and Strupi, feel free to talk as much about Tetrahedron as you want. Okay. This is a very informal forum, and what we are trying to do today is to get people ready for 2 years of Bucky meetups, 100 meetups of Bucky. Okay, that's what we're trying to do. And my knowledge itself is very low, and there is a lot of people whose knowledge isn't very low, but we are trying to learn. That's what we're trying to do. All right, let's bring in our study of Bhagavad Gita. We looked at the 4 yogas, 4 paths. Karma yoga, that of action, the yoga of action. Bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion. Jnana yoga, the yoga of knowledge. And Dhyana yoga, the yoga of concentration. What Krishna says is that all these paths are open to you. Choose any path. And if you proceed on one path, you will automatically make progress on other paths. All of them go together, and they go to the same place. So this is a great example of the fourfoldness. Yasuhiko Kimura did a fantastic presentation, amazing presentation on the fourfold path. He talked about the ideas of William Blake and Goethe of exactly this point about the fourfold path. I strongly recommend that. Joe, if you can find the link, if you could put it in the chat, would appreciate that. So that is, one of the largest examples of this approach that I've seen. Most profound, one of the most profound things I've seen. So I recommend that highly. I want to give you an example completely different, and that is Aristotle's four causes. When we think of causality, we think in the modern times, we think mostly of efficient causality, to some extent material causality. Aristotle thought of four causes. And the cause here is not really the right word. Because what happens is that what the words, what they referred to at earlier times is very different from what they refer to now. So the meaning of the words has changed. So you have to try to commune with the original text in order to figure out what is meant. So let's connect this up, because we've done this entire series on Gospel of John. I'm repeatedly bringing that up, but only because many of people here are familiar with it. We have just done that whole thing in celebration of Christmas. The final cause is, what are you after? What is the ultimate goal? And in the Gospel of John, the ultimate goal is God the Father. That's where you're trying to go. The second question is how? What is the form of it? What will get you there? That's the way. And that is the formal cause that gives you the pattern, gives you the prototype for getting there. And that is the Son. And then there is the helper who helps you along. That is the efficient cause that is moving you towards that. And your body, the material existence, is the material cause. And all of these go together. They are one, and they are many. They are four at the same time. Let me, so wrapping up, this is the general, this is the terminology that I find most accessible to most people: true, wise, good. And the fourth one was loving. It's love is the right word, but unfortunately love, again, the meaning of it today is, refers to many different things. It's not as clear. So I'm focusing on the unifying force. So that's a very quick overview of this, of what tetrahedrons can do for you. What I'm saying is that really what tetrahedron does is that it allows you to think in an integrated way. It allows you to focus on things individually, look at them in detail, but never lose the connection between that and the whole. And there is a structure to it. The idea of structure is a very, very deep idea. It is very interesting. The Romans had a very, very advanced idea of structures. So did our founding fathers. So it's not enough to have to know what you're trying to do, what your goal is, but you need to be able to build structures for it. So you need to be a structural engineer in order to do that. So this is an invitation to explore tetrahedrons. And we're just getting started because we're going deep into Buckminster Fuller's work. We are going to have a number of people. I already have 8 different presentations planned for January and February, and I'm in the process of setting up the remaining. We're going to do 100 meetups on Buckminster Fuller's ideas. And this is a warm-up session for that. So I'm now going to invite, let me see, I'll start with Kurt. Kurt, would you like to talk a little bit about tetrahedrons? Anything you want to say? I'm going to stop sharing. Let's see. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, thanks. There's a famous figure in synergetics you're probably familiar with, where Bucky looks at Plato's triad. He says, well, it's not really a system because the observer is not part of it. And so we could find that and put it in the chat and people could see it. And so that characterizes, I think, some of the examples you gave, right? Where you had the observer as part of the tetrahedron. And then there are other ones where you talk about the four aspects of situation, where the observer might be outside of it, maybe, or Stroopy will do better, probably show us, if you, put a point in the center of the tetrahedron inside of it, that point can connect to all the other corners.
Mm-hmm.
And so that might be an interesting visualization. So that's my main comment on what
Wonderful.
you talked about. And then there's another discussion, maybe for another day, about those edges, which we sometimes call relations, or what, in some ways we say, well, that's what holds things together, or the connecting things. And then we view those as active. And you talked about verbs or adjectives, maybe describing those, which is good. And then you get into a very deep thing, which I don't know if anybody has really figured out. What happens at those corners when the different relations come together? There's some kind of combining, but it doesn't ever balance exactly. Bucky was clear on that, right? There's always a little left over. And so that's what I think you referred to as the leaky corner,
Mm-hmm.
right? So nothing is separated from the universe. So those corners are either sort of sending something out or getting something back in to help balance stuff out. So there's just a couple comments for you, just on your material, but it was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt, and look forward to your presentation. So I'm, very, very excited that you'll be talking so wonderful.